Okay, today is April 6th, 2021. It is 7:01 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting of the Arundel Planning Board to order. We do have a quorum. Jamie's here, Roger is here, Marty is here, and I'm here. Hopefully some more of the planning board will show up. We'll start with an approval of the agenda. On the agenda, we have approval of the minutes of March 16th. We have public comments. We have pending applications. Arundel's Keep, a major preliminary subdivision application determination of completeness. We have two new applications, Oak Ridge Terrace 1, an amendment to an approved subdivision. Item 2 is Oak Ridge Terrace 2, a subdivision pre-application and sketch plan. We have 5 items in the land use ordinance that we will be looking at. There is a citizen's request to delete the 1,000-foot setback requirement for a medical marijuana caregiver facility from a church and daycare. Item 2 is an application for home occupations type 1 and 2. Item 3 is a discussion concerning the proposed addition of Chapter 1000 DEP shoreland zoning performances. Item 4 is a discussion on the residential growth ordinance. And item 5 is proposed amendments to the cluster housing planned unit developments. We will then have this town planners report and other business. Well, it now looks like everybody can get in. Cool.
Ready?
I need a motion.
I would make a motion that we accept the agenda as written and read.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Yay.
Okay. Roger makes a motion. Tom seconds it.
That's
Any
Marty.
discussion?
That was Marty.
I'm sorry, Marty. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
Aye.
Marty?
Yay.
It is unanimous. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of March 16th, 2021.
Who was present?
I will let you know in just a minute. You were there, Marty.
Okay.
Roger was there. I was there.
Tom was there. Jens was there.
Yep, but they're not here on the meeting right now. So but we do have a quorum of those of us that were at the meeting. Actually, I'm not sure we do. Hang on just for a second. 1, 2. No, we're equally split. It's a 50-50 draw, so we don't have a quorum. We will have to table this. We'll table it to the end of the meeting, and hopefully some of the other planning board members will be able to get in. The next item will be public comment. This is that time in the meeting when if you have a comment about something that is not on the agenda and you would like the planning board to look at, signal by waving your hand or getting my attention in some fashion. Not seeing anybody signaling, I will assume that there is nothing from a public comment point of view, and we will move on. Pending application, Arundel's Keep, a major preliminary subdivision application, a determination of completeness, a proposal to develop an 8-lot cluster subdivision with a 675-foot long private way serving 2 lots located off Irving Road on a 58.02 acre parcel tax map 19 lot 8 in the R4 and shoreland zone. Arundel's Keep LLC is the owner. Jason Vafiades PE is the applicant, and Jason is on the line. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you, Rich. Hello, everybody. I think
we're all familiar with this project, maybe a little too much these days, but yeah, 8-lot subdivision. Last time we were here, we had a couple of lag items. We had to redo the nitrate analysis. And I think the big one was figuring out what to do with the open space. With your latest submittal package, you have, I think, an agreement in principle with quite a bit of the legal work done for the open space to go to the Arundel Land Trust, which will be, I think they're pretty excited about, as well as updated all the hydro-geo calculations, redone the plans. I do have Tad's comments, staff review comments. There's a couple of typos on a couple sheets and a couple of easy items, but I would say that this application is complete, and we'd like to schedule the public hearing for the next meeting so we can move on to the next steps.
Comments, Ted?
No, Jason has my comments. There are some typos and a couple of things that need to be fixed, which are easily done. We have the basic framework of how the conservation easement is going to work. The road situation, First Light Road is in the location it needed to be. A couple of small changes of that have to be done at the final level. I think if the board is satisfied, I think we can go to public hearing on this. Deem it complete and go to public hearing.
To the chair.
Yeah, Marty,
We've had others join our meeting from the
Yeah.
planning board.
let the record show Tom again joined us at 7:07. And Jens Bergen joined us at 7:08.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Oh.
gentlemen.
Susan is on her way.
She is, okay.
Yeah.
As you can see, we have a full meeting tonight.
Missing some.
Are there any questions by the board for the applicant? So I assume the board is satisfied with the results that we have? In which case I need a motion to move this on to a public hearing.
I'll motion we have a public hearing.
I would second that.
Motion by Roger, seconded by Jens to move forward to a public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing none. We will move on to the public hearing for April 20th at 7 p.m. Hey, I lost Jason. Oh, there he is.
Nope, I'm here.
You keep moving around, Jason.
That works for me.
Okay, and let the record reflect that I believe this is Susan that is joining us at this point. Yes, let the record reflect Susan Roth is joining us at 7:09. Okay, all those in favor of the public hearing on April 20th at 7 p.m. Jamie,
Aye.
Roger,
Aye.
Marty,
Yay.
Tom?
Aye.
It is unanimous. And we will proceed forward to the new applications. Oak Ridge
Thank
Terrace.
you.
Oak Ridge Terrace 1, amendment to an approved subdivision. A proposal to realign the property line between lots 4 and 5 in the Oak Ridge 1 subdivision to correct a violation of the rear yard setback for a dwelling constructed on lot 4 in the R2 SO and SP districts. The owner of lot 4 is South Coast Construction, and the owner of lot is Oak Ridge LLC. The applicant is Walter Woods. Would you catch us up on this, Ted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have essentially a violation of the rear lot line by construction of the existing house on lot 4. As a result, this came out at a mortgage survey. The applicant was preparing to close when the mortgage survey came out and indicated that they had violated that lot line. That brought things to a screeching halt. What is being proposed is that lot 5, the owner of lot 5, which is Oak Ridge Terrace LLC, is proposing to move the eastern property line to swing it to the west 12 feet. That would give the house the necessary 25-foot setback from the side lot line. It will make lot 5 a little smaller, by about 988 feet, I think I calculated, square feet, 933 square feet. And still, I looked at the building permit for lot 5 does have a pending. Looked at that. That swing will not greatly impact the location of the house septic system or well on lot 5. And it'll bring lot 4 into conformance. This is an amendment to the approved plan. It has to be approved by the planning board. The applicant has taken care of you'll notice in your package, you have both the drawing, you have a large drawing, you have a smaller drawing, and the blow-up drawing, and you also have the proposed deed showing the change in the alignment for both lots. This is essentially, as I said, an amendment. The planning board is not required to have a public hearing, but they can if they so wish. And the question is, how does board want to proceed? This will bring, by the way, this change will bring both lots in. Will bring lot 4 into conformance, and lot 5 will still stay. It's a little bit smaller, as I said, but it's still under it's still above the 20,000 square feet minimum lot size for a septic and well lot.
Okay, so for general knowledge, what caused this problem?
I'm Eric, South Coast Construction. I own the lot 4. I built the house on it. I don't know exactly. My suspicions are Friday evening, I laid out the stakes with the excavator. I had a string that ran from pin to pin on 3-foot oak stakes. So there was a direct straight line. I had 35 feet off of that line. And we came back, my excavator came back Monday, dug the hole, built the house, brought us to the mortgage survey. That's when I found out that we weren't conforming. I suspect our markers were tampered with. I have no, that's my suspicions only. So the result is that Walter and I have had a meeting. We discussed it. He has agreed to sell me a portion of that lot 5 to make it to conform on my lot 4.
Thank you. To the planning board, what is your pleasure?
Should we have evidence that that piece of property will be transmitted to them before we make an approval?
Well,
You have the new deeds, and Ted has some new deeds in his possession. I believe they were sent in by email.
Okay.
The revised-
Well, it seems to be, that's quite a bit out of whack, 9 feet, but mistakes happen, and if it was a mistake, or if somebody was tampered with it, then I don't see an issue with the request. Seems a reasonable way to handle it.
Yeah, I think it is, if the original application came in with this delineation, I think it would have been no problem. So I don't see it being a problem now.
Roger,
Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
Susan,
Yes, I'm in agreement. I think as long as the property has been transferred and everything's in conforming place, I'm fine with it.
okay. Jamie,
Might have lost him.
no, he's still here, but he's muted.
Sorry, my connection is tough. Yeah, I don't have any issue with that.
Okay,
So I have a quick question. Walter, have we checked and made sure that all the other lots that have houses on them and the pins that have been placed and the markers for the excavators are all conforming and where they should be? If you think there's a chance somebody was playing fast and loose with the with the markers?
You're muted, Walter.
How's that? You hear me?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan, all the property pins, we hired Horizons engineers to actually place all the property pins throughout the development. So all the property pins in the front as well as the rear are in place. I don't know of anybody tampering with the lines, but we double check our lines. Matter of fact, we had the surveyor stake the 25-foot setback on the side of lot 5 just to make sure that the new house that we'll be building there will meet the setbacks as well. So each lot that I go to, I always check the pins prior to and set the 25-foot setbacks from both sides with other stakes prior to us digging that foundation.
Okay, I just want to make sure this isn't a recurring circumstance that we're going to get people coming before the board asking, you know, for some kind of revision to the original, you know, plot map. And
I think if it becomes a recurring issue, then we have the appropriate solution by telling them to move the building.
I think part of the issue is I probably dropped the ball when the excavator showed up and started digging the hole. I should have confirmed it at that point. Walter does that. He makes sure everything is where it should be. That's something I neglected to do, and it won't happen again. I can tell you that.
Now, the next question, since we all seem to be in agreement with doing this, do we need to have a public hearing?
No,
No.
No,
No,
I think
No.
we're pretty. Okay, so I think we're pretty much in agreement on that. So if someone would make a motion to accept this revision and waive the public hearing,
I'll make that motion that we accept and approve the request and skip a public hearing. Waive public hearing.
I'll second that.
motion by Tom, seconded by Susan. Jamie,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Roger,
aye.
Marty,
yay.
it is unanimous. I don't think I missed anybody. I missed Jens, sorry.
Aye, it's okay.
Jens. Everybody's moving around on my screen to different spots. All right. That takes care of,
Could I ask one question, please?
yes,
First, I'd just like to thank the board for making this possible in one meeting. It helps me out more than you would know. The question is, is it possible to get the signed new plot plan tomorrow? I have a closing Thursday.
I would like to say yes, but that's going to be nearly impossible. Even if we were to have them at town hall for everyone to come in and sign, there's no guarantee everybody could make it in. What we're doing in this day and age of COVID is sending it out through DocuLink for signatures on everyone, which I will have tomorrow and get it distributed out, but I can't guarantee that it's going to get back.
Okay, so
If everybody here is aware of it, as soon as it comes in, sign it and get it back to me and I'll get it to Tad. I can get it to him on Thursday.
yeah, that'd be extremely appreciated. I appreciate what you're doing so far. Yeah, so Jim will be able to give me the CO as soon as I get that and we can close on it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Okay, item number 2, Oak Ridge Terrace subdivision pre-application and sketch plan. A proposal to construct a 2,365-foot linear foot loop road through phase 2 residual land and an adjoining 63-acre lot, tax map 10, lot 10, connecting Oak Ridge Terrace to the upgraded Laura Lane in order to facilitate the development of additional lots generating more than 250 vehicle trips per day. The property to be developed is map 17, lot 15A, and map 10, lot 10 in the R2, SO, and SP districts. And the respective owners are Oak Ridge Terrace LLC and Rennie Turgeon and Anthony. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Anthony's last name. Considering how badly I did with Jason, I don't think it's fair to butcher Anthony's name at the same time. Anthony is the applicant's agent. And where is Anthony?
Thank you, Richard.
Oh, there you are.
For some reason, my video won't start, so I'm gonna have to go without it for now. Anyway, Tony Panciocco from Atlanta Resource Consultants. As mentioned, we're here with a sketch plan of a road layout for a second phase of Oak Ridge Terrace. And what we really want to do is get some input from the board, specifically on Laura Lane. I know there's been a lot of conversation about Laura Lane and its width and whether we can loop back into that, carrying more than 250 trips. As indicated in the letter, currently Laura Lane has binder course down and it's been measured. I believe Walter went out and measured it. It's about 21 feet 6 inches wide of pavement right now. And in the meantime, Walter did talk to Roger at Public Works, and there's a letter in your packets indicating that he thinks we should keep that road at 21 and a half feet and loop back into it for future lots. Again, we didn't really show any lots on this because it's going to be dictated by the road. So, you know, as we work our way through the road and the different alignments, you know, obviously we'll be back with a sketch plan with lot layouts. We want to get this road thing out there and get some comments and get the best direction we can get to move forward.
Well, before I make my comments, does anybody on the board have comments? Well, since nobody has any comments, I will jump right in. I understand that Roger gave you a letter, but Roger was speaking out of turn. The ordinance, the street design ordinance in the town of Arundel doesn't give us the ability to say that this road can be 21 and a half feet. The street design ordinance labels this as a connector road, and it says that connector roads shall be 24 feet. We don't have the leeway to waive that.
Through the chair,
Yeah, Marty.
let it be known that we did not, this is nothing that what the planning board had done because that was taken over by the road group.
That's true. This is a standalone ordinance outside of the land use ordinance by the planning board.
Put another way, we simply have no authority
Yeah.
on this particular point.
Right.
So, so if we go back and widen the road to 24 feet, can we get some comment on what the rest of the layout would be and whether that would be, you know, something the board would want to take a look at? I guess we're trying to figure out our options here, the best option to move forward, and whether that means widening Laura Lane or once it's widened, having the loop connection, therefore allowing for the additional lots.
Well, from a road construction point of view, it would have to be widened. I know that we had mentioned this quite a few times over the past year, that if there was going to be a connection and it was going to be using Laura Lane, it had to be 24 feet. That's my understanding of the reason that Hissong was first approached, was to be able to gain access to his property to avoid the traffic on Laura Lane. Hissong has said no, because none of the people in his development want the traffic going through there.
Tad, I have a question. Wouldn't all of the entire loop and Laurel Lane need to be 24 feet?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends how many lots they put on the loop road. If that has the same amount of traffic on the loop road, then it's got to be 24 feet.
So
Just-
all of it?
I would agree with Susan in that all of it has to be 24.5 feet, including the section that is currently 21 feet. It would all have to be upgraded to the connector road status.
If it exceeds 25 units, right?
Well, but you wouldn't, in theory, you wouldn't have the existing lots doing the loop. And you also have a split traffic pattern between on the loop.
But they could use the loop, right? They could find different ways out of the development, so they could either use one egress or the other. But you can't predict which entrance and exit is going to get the most traffic.
At the end of the day, when this project started, the engineers and Mr. Woods were informed that if he built phase 2, that road had to be built to the connector road status, which included the work that has already been done on Laurel Lane. It needs to be expanded to meet the requirements of the connector road based on the construction standards ordinance in the street design.
And that again is based on 25 lots or more, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I believe it's more than 25 lots.
Yeah, it's 20. Yes, it is.
Thanks.
And Tad, what does that do to our original agreement with the residents of Laurel Lane? That, is it understood that it could have ended up as a connector road and ending up being 24 feet and having in excess of 250 trips a day in and out of the development?
Well, when we first reviewed this project, remember we were reviewing a 10 or 11 lot subdivision. So we also moved to phase 2, and that issue of how many lots were going to be on phase 2 was going to be something that you're going to have to grapple with. But at that time, we were only reviewing a subdivision that had essentially 10 lots on, actually 11 lots off of Laurel Lane and Oak Ridge Terrace. So talking about this issue, I think all the way through the approval process of phase 1. And this is with the addition of Mr. Turgan's land, that opens up a much larger development than what was originally envisioned. Not to say that you can't make it work, but yes, this is a different, a larger scaled project than what was originally proposed. But that's why the planning board is making decisions. We're providing the applicant with some direction right now on how much infrastructure, and the size of that infrastructure that has to be done in order to meet our standards.
Okay, Susan, you have your hand up? And I'll get to you afterward, Ken.
I do. So when we initially agreed, when Laurel Lane was a private road, we agreed in the court's home and then in my home privately with conversations before we signed away the use of Laurel Lane as a private road, that the road would be upgraded with only the use for the initial development, and that there would be one entrance to the road, and that would be at Oak Ridge Terrace, original entrance, and there would be no other transportation happening on it. That was the discussion and the understanding of all of the people that lived on Laurel Lane when we initially signed away the use to use Laurel Lane to assist to create Oak Ridge Terrace for the road to be developed. So this is going against what we agreed as a collective, because now we've signed it, so therefore can do what you want. No, but that's not what we agreed upon. So that's to answer your question. It was not agreed upon that this would continue to grow. It was agreed upon there would be one entrance only, and it would go from the Oak Ridge Terrace original entrance.
Dan, you had a comment?
Yeah, besides Susan's comment, which is fully understandable, I took a quick look at the street design, and as I was reading this, it may not apply, but there is a section in the street design for variances and waivers, but I think it mostly applies to the street acceptance criteria, but you know, maybe there could be a hardship issue with that if it was to go through. I believe we'd probably really want to get an understanding of what the issue is as far as why it cannot be expanded. But again, I go back to Susan's point, if there was something that was already accepted, then in order to get that second entrance, it would have to be approved again by all of the residents of that area.
Yeah, Jerry?
Yeah, I agree with Susan completely. We was sold that it was 24 lots that were gonna be built there, phase 1 and the phase 2. Nothing about a second entrance, nothing about adding additional houses, nothing about purchasing another 60 some odd acres. I believe if you go back to your file, when you sat there and approved this subdivision, in the whole thing, there was supposed to be a 25-foot from the property line of no tree cutting at all. Natural growth of 25 feet from all property lines. How do you build a house less than 25 feet if you have 25 feet of woods? So obviously they did not follow that part of the subdivision rules. Also, is there a setback requirement from the front of the house to the beginning of the house? I know there's 25 feet left, right, and rear. What's the front?
Tad?
Same, 25.
It is 25 feet. Yep.
25 feet all the way around?
All the way around.
It's a cluster division, so the normal setbacks that would be operating in the R2 district obviously are reduced in order to create a cluster development in which you actually have more open space preservation as a result. And that's why these lot line setbacks are less than you would see in an R2 district.
Okay, so I guess that last lot 4 that you just approved, in the original thing, you said the rear property line was 25 feet, correct?
Yes.
So the front property line would be the opposite end of the building, correct? Which would be Laurel Lane. Now, Laurel Lane has its own setback rules, which does not fit with this subdivision. We have a 75-foot setback rule. Am I correct with that?
When you say Laurel Lane, are you talking about the association or are you talking about a standard subdivision?
My deed as of Laurel Lane says I have to have a 75-foot setback from the road, the center of the road. Now that lot 4 driveway comes off Laurel Lane. Does he follow the 75-foot setback or does he have to follow the 25-foot setback of Oak Ridge, which the road does not come off Oak Ridge?
I think, and I'm speaking, I may be speaking out of turn. You might have to address this to Mr. Woods, but I believe that lot is a combination, is a fusion of several lots. And that deed has been rewritten and I have no idea whether or not it has any of the deed restrictions that were on that Laurel Lane applied to that constituted lot 4, which is partly, I think, Walter's lot and partly your lot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't know if it had changed or where the front or the rear of the house was and everything went through. But yes, I totally agree with Susan that we all had agreed on 24 lots. We were not told that this was going to be an ongoing. It was a phase 1, a phase 2, and that was it. As far as this new land that, he's made agreements with Mr. Turgeon, I think somebody needs to speak with Mr. Turgeon on that. I think he may have other ideas on that. That's all I got, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turgeon, do you have any comments?
He's muted.
You are muted, Mr. Turgeon.
You need to unmute yourself.
Susan, you have your hand up again?
I do. I was just curious, discussing the Laurel Lane original people that live here, and now you're counting the 24 built on the lots. Is Laurel Lane now considered part of that development? Therefore, does the number actually go down because the houses that already live here? Like how many houses can you go for 24 or less if the houses are already here?
You need to include all the houses on that road.
Correct. So how many actual buildable lots can you do in addition to what's already been lotted and plotted of phase 2?
How many lots are there on Laurel Lane?
7 homes.
7 homes on Laurel Lane, and there are 11 in the subdivision?
phase one.
Right, but there's 11 in the phase one, correct, Walter?
That's correct. I should be able to do another 7 lots
Right,
based on the standards.
yeah, based on the standards, that would put you right at the 250.
That's correct.
Without doing any additional entrance or exit.
That's correct.
Right.
Again, the reason why we're just here to, to get a direction from the planning board, if there was any, are there any other, potential waiver capabilities that the planning board may have and then the question is, would the planning board even, partake in that and make those decisions? So we're here informatively to see which direction we can go. I know if, this application doesn't work with bringing in the loop road, tying it back into Laurel Lane at the end of the day, then I would have to acquire a second means of egress somewhere, of which I tried to acquire that egress through Hisson, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, and that was to no avail. So this is why we came to you with this sketch plan, just to see what the planning board has and if it's feasible at all.
Or you could reduce the number of lots, Walter, and disperse whatever the 25th lot among the other lots you're developing and make them slightly larger, or make your open space slightly greater, and that would bring you under the threshold and give you breathing room.
Yes, Susan, that's exactly right. And that's the direction most likely we would head. This is why we just brought this proposal this evening, to see if it was feasible and if the planning board will support it. That's why we're here this evening. So we understand, Chairman's concerns and what he's addressed, but we will just, again, that's what we're here tonight to find out.
I appreciate that. From the planning board's point of view, we have no choice in the matter because the ordinance says that it has to be 24 feet. And it says shall be 24, and we don't have the authority to waive that. That being said, I don't know how the rest of the planning board would feel about it, but I would not be in favor of waiving it if we had the authority to do so. I think there was enough notice given over the time that phase one was put in, and in conjunction with the conversations that took place with the Laurel Lane residents, I would be very averse to wanting to waive that 24-foot requirement.
Since we don't have the authority, then that's pretty much a dictum.
Yeah, it's pretty much of a moot point because we don't have the authority.
That's fine. That's the direction I was looking for.
Okay.
So the option would be if I improve the road to 24 feet of Laurel Lane, we would be able to do the 24 to 25 lots that we've discussed based on the ordinance.
Based on the ordinance, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Hang
have
on,
a question, please.
Dolly has a question.
So the agreement was when we, as Laura Lane, approved, or myself and my husband gave the easement for Mr. Woods to do this phase one and phase two, it was for 24 house lots. Period.
It
Susan?
seems like,
So currently, I'm asking, isn't Laura Lane still a private road? Isn't Laura Lane still an association? So as Dan was saying, don't we have to approve the addition of this because it is not a public road as of yet, and we agreed to the initial plan. So now you're taking away what we had as a private road, creating it as a public road. Is it something that we have to agree to again, or is it just because, oh, we signed it, we trusted, we're done?
Through the chair.
Marty?
It's not a private, public road because it has not been approved by the town, first of all. Okay?
Correct.
So it would still at this time, correct me if I'm wrong, it still would be a private road.
Right, it's still part of the association.
So
No,
don't
it's
the
not.
association members need to approve of it?
No.
See,
The
that's what I'm saying.
association-
So we approved it, and now you're changing the rules because you can.
No, not at all. The association has easement to utilize that road and to access that road for ingress and egress, utilities, vehicles and things of that nature. That road is owned by me. I purchased that road. And I own the right of way. And as we met and sat in Dolly and Jerry's house, and I will agree with Dolly and Jerry that I said there'd be a subdivision, 23 to 25 lots there. And because I knew the ordinance kickoff was the 25 lots was the trigger. So we all were on the same page in reference to that we were going to move forward in that direction. The association is just an association for the maintenance of the road until I move forward to bring it to the town standards and bring it to public hearing to be voted and approved by the town, of which I told you folks I'd be doing that as well. And that is another reason why I purchased the road, because the ordinance specifically says that the person that's bringing this to town vote has to be the owner of this road. And that's why I purchased it from Mrs. Falkland. So we would be able to do that legally and legitimately without having a problem at the end of the day. So at this point, the association has, the only right the association has in reference to the maintenance and upkeep of the road, but I own the road and I should be able to utilize that road as the ordinance allows me to utilize that road, as long as I meet the letter of the law, as the ordinance is written. And that's what my intent is to do. And that's why I'm here this evening, to talk to the planning board and get their input on that. So I have a direction to move forward to finalize, my phase 2 that we've talked about.
So, but Walter, when you weigh the dollars and cents of reducing your next phase by a single lot, as juxtaposed against what it would cost you to upgrade all of the loop and Laurel Lane to 24.5 feet, isn't it a financial win for you to cut that last lot up and disperse it, or make part of it open space and call it a day? Because there seems to be such a sensible solution that can be made where you come out whole and a lot of changes don't have to be made to either the road, or feelings don't have to be heard on Laurel Lane, and you could all ride off into the sunset and be okay with what you agreed to.
Yeah, Susan, the agreement was that, like I said, the 23 to 25 lots that we did have that discussion in Jerry Court's house. I'm not saying to construct a loop road at this point. I'm talking about doing the 24 to 25 lots on my property, but I would have to improve the existing Laurel Lane from 21.6 to 24 feet wide pavement to be able to do that.
Right, and what I'm saying to you is, isn't it just more cost effective to make a 24 lots come under that threshold? Do something with that, disperse that extra piece of property in different ways and not have to upgrade the road to 24.5 feet? Doesn't it get pretty expensive to do that?
Well, I'd actually be losing 4 or 5 lots. I'd be losing 4 to 5 lots as far as the cost of the value of the saleability of those 4 to 5 lots would definitely offset the cost of me improving Laurel Lane to 24 feet wide.
And why do you lose the value of those 4 to 5 lots when you're really only one lot is in play?
No, because right now, Susan, the road on Laurel Lane is 21 feet 6 inches. It is not 24 at this point. So because it's 21.5 feet wide, by ordinance, I could actually only physically build 7 more lots, because we have to count the lots on Laurel Lane as part of our development for the purpose of trips per day. And correct me if I'm wrong. So once we're over the extra 7 lots, then I have to improve, based on the ordinance, Laurel Lane to 24 feet wide only, to be able to do the 23 to 25 that we talked about.
I understand what you're saying now. So it's not just one lot.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so it's Laurel Lane plus the development plus what you want to develop.
That's correct.
Okay.
To the chair.
Yeah, Marty.
Now, if in the event it did go to 24.5, okay, we just had discussion with lot 4, and its setbacks at present is 25 feet. Correct me if I'm what I was listening. If it is wider, would that lot not be non-conformance?
No, the lot is, the width of the right of way is actually physically 50 feet, Marty. And the pavement would just expand another 3 feet to meet the 24 and a half within the right of way that's already there. So the property pins won't change. Just the pavement will expand from 21 and a half to 24 and a half feet, but it'll still be within the right of way that's existing, which then all the lots would then, meet their setbacks appropriately.
Okay, I was just asking.
Yep. I think I have a direction, folks. I appreciate your time. Obviously, you've given us the direction we need and which direction to go. Tony, do you have any other thing to interject on this?
No, I was just, that gave us some direction. The only thing I would say is that if you widen Laura Lane, then the subdivision road could still stay at 20 because those 7 lots wouldn't count as in the 25.
That's correct. That's what I believe anyways. I'm not sure how the board reviews that.
Right, but that's the subdivision. That's not the loop road.
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm not talking, yeah, I'm just talking the existing Oak Ridge Terrace Road, and whatever extension is made for the additional lot.
I agree with that.
So Walter, can I ask a question? If you were to be limited to only 7 additional lots from what's already on Laura Lane and already approved in phase 1 of your development, would you be looking to still do the loop, or would you just do more or less the stub into your property?
I think at this time, the only way that I would be able to do a work within Mr. Church's property is to find a second means of egress.
Okay, right.
In another direction. Obviously, if I can't find that, and I have been working on that for the last 3 or 4 months. That's why I have not come to you folks for phase 2, because we were working on trying to acquire a second means of egress so we wouldn't have to bring Laura Lane up to 24 feet wide. We would be able to use that second means of egress to do that and meet the criterion ordinance. So at this point, that was the direction we needed so we can make that decision. So my only options are now either to bring Laura Lane up to 24 feet wide and do the 24 to 25 lot subdivision and finish out the project as I planned originally, or not bring Laura Lane up to 24 feet and just go in and finish the second phase up with 7 lots. And like Susan said, make the lots a little larger, leave a little more open space, whichever the case may be. And then my third option would be, again, try to acquire second means of egress from another location. Those are the options that I see, Tony.
I would point out that right now you can build 7 additional lots and not have a problem. But
I would agree with that.
if you build the 8th one, then you're going to have a problem.
I agree with that.
Okay. Because remember that the 25 lots include the 9 houses on Laura Lane.
7 houses.
7 houses. Okay.
I understand that.
Okay. Then
I appreciate your time. I've got a direction.
all right. Thank you very much.
I have a question before he leaves.
Yes.
So and that's to the chair and maybe the planner. Where does the agreement that was made with the residents on Laurel Lane stand? Is that something that's been documented somewheres? Or is that just a gentleman's agreement that was made? It sounds like a couple of the residents have already said that we agreed to signing this off on 25 houses and nothing more. If it's going to be more, then it's in contradiction to what was agreed upon. And was there a legal document that supports that?
There is an agreement that we did have. I'm sorry, Ted, if you want to speak there.
Walter, you speak to it.
We do have an agreement that we did sign, and the agreement was based on phase 1, phase 2, and it was based in discussion on 23 to 25 lots. But I'm not, I mean, if another piece of property came available to me to make a connection, I own the road. The association doesn't have the right to tell the owner of that property what he can and cannot do as long as I meet the letter of the law. The association's discussion was for 23 to 25 lots, and I won't deny that. And I do have all the folks' signatures on that. But either way, if I bought the road I wouldn't need the association's reason to do anything. I just went to them proactively to discuss what my intent is on this project. And this is the direction that we can go to make this work for everybody. I was originally going to come in with a longer road from Limerick Road, and the people from Laurel Lane approached me to ask me if I would be willing to change that and come in from Laurel Lane instead. So then I would then finish the road at my expense because the developer, the original developer, did not complete the road as per planning board approval. So I agreed to do that, for that purpose. So again, I don't disagree with Mr. and Mrs. Court that I did say that this project would be 23 to 25 lots, but there's nothing that says I can't do any more. It's just, this is what we discussed in reference to the project. If I purchase another piece of property and we wanted to make a connection to another road, I don't see how the board can hold up an association's agreement, which only is for maintenance and repair until the town accepts this road, and stop me from doing further development. I
guess my point is just how good is your word? That's all I need to say.
Yep.
Can I say something, please?
Yes, Susan.
The thing is that the discussion was had just of the board. I have two questions. Well, one comment, one question. First comment was when the discussion was had with the entire Laura Lane, it was under no understanding that Mr. Woods would be buying the road. It came as a surprise to some people. I'm just going to finish my sentence, please. Secondly, is that if you do continue the loop and make expansion, why doesn't the entire subdivision have to be that way and not just Laura Lane if you get a loop going in the back that has to be larger? I was just curious about that. So the fact that you're saying you can build on it, yes. Does your brother's house considered part of the subdivision as well? Is that also a count in that situation off of Limerick Road?
It does not by code because it's not physically going onto Laurel Lane.
That off of Skillings.
Correct. And the other lot 1 comes off of Limerick Road. So that's not part of the count, but correct. All the lots that physically their driveways come to Laurel Lane have to be accepted and counted in reference to this ordinance, Susan, that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so that was my question. And like I said before, you did buy the land, you do have the thing, but the understanding, if you want a gentleman's agreement, not a gentleman's agreement, before you came along, we had to do everything to this road. So it wasn't just maintenance, it was also just keeping up everything and following the ordinance to our example. So we were accepting you as part of our group. So I understand what you're saying, that you legally have that, but that was not the understanding. And to say that we all addressed you, we did not. We accepted, yes, but we did not approach you. So let me be clear on that on the record, please.
No, I want to make that point very clear that I was approached by Jerry Court at the planning board meeting and say, hey, Walter, why don't we sit and talk and come in another direction? And so I'm just saying that, that I was approached and I thought it was a positive thing for both sides for us to do what we did. For one, it eliminated wetland fillings. It eliminated wetland fillings, minimized that impact, and also got you folks that I paid to fix your road and bring it up to town standard.
And it got you without doing EPA issues getting over into your property. It was a win-win, but to continue on to say it's going to be a through road and to be something with traffic going through, which was not the understanding of the initial plan. So I just want to put that out there, that you are changing what you said to us as an agreement.
Okay, so Jens, you have your hand up?
No.
Oh.
Do I?
Yeah, you do.
Sorry, I do.
Okay.
Apparently I do. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? George, you have direction in which yes, Dan.
There's one thing I just wanted to answer. Dan had a two-pronged question. The town never got into any of these agreements. Those were private agreements between all the property owners and the developer. And then we reacted to the applications that were brought to us. So we did not make any agreements, nor did we have any actual authority to make any such agreements.
Okay.
Last question, Rich.
Yes,
Just so I'm clear on it. The acquisition by Walter of the other land is something that was subsequent to the discussions, the initial discussions with the Laura Lane group, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that purchase was not contemplated at the time of those discussions, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Woods.
Thank you for your time, folks. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
You're
for your
welcome.
Take care.
Yeah.
Okay. Cancel that. Gotta get back to my agenda. What did I do with the agenda? I had it up at one point. There we go. Okay, next item, land use ordinance, citizen request to delete the 1,000-foot setback requirement of a medical marijuana caregiver facility from a church and daycare facility. The applicant is Nyoto Inoue of the Solar Center, 25 Limerick Road, tax map 35, lot 13 in the DB1 and the DB2 district. We've been discussing this for a couple of months now, I would say, or we've had it in front of us a couple of times to discuss. I think it's time for us to make a decision. We either support this or we don't support it.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
The language change that I'm seeking is not to eliminate 1,000 feet language, but to strike the words daycare and church. That's the difference. I'm not asking 1,000 feet. And then last meeting, there were a couple of things that got brought up and I wasn't able to respond to it. But one thing that was brought up was the survey, and I have been able to review the survey questions, and the survey itself never addressed caregiver program. It was only about the retail adult use program, which is two different programs.
It was not meant to address the medical marijuana. That was already law in Sanford at the time. We were more concerned with the retail aspect of it.
Right, and I don't think that medical marijuana has any retail component to it. The second thing that was more a bigger concern, I think, was the fact that the federal government still considers cannabis plants to be Schedule 1 item. But I did a little research, and in 2013, Assistant Attorney General at the time, Cole, made a Cole amendment memorandum issued to all of the state attorney generals, saying that the federal government Justice Department would not be pursuing the Schedule 1 standards if individual states has its own legalization or substantive cannabis rules. And I also found that in 2017, Attorney General Jeff Sessions rescinded that Cole memorandum and had Rod Rosenstein review the Cole amendment. And 2018, Rosenstein declared that there will be no substantive changes to Cole amendment memorandum. And most recently in 2020, Merrick Garland, the new Attorney General, stated that Cole memorandum will be honored. So as far as the town and the state, since we have gone down the road of legalization in a substantive way, the town does not have any liabilities from the federal government. That's all I have to say.
That's all well and good. That still does not change the fact that federal law says that possession or sales or anything else within 1,000 yards of a school or a daycare or a church is going to get you thrown in jail. The fact that they won't enforce the law is irrelevant. The law is still the law. And it does not have an impact on the land use ordinance in the town of Arundel. We, as a planning board, enacted this law back, what was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we put this on the books. And we had discussions about whether or not 1,000 feet was a good idea or it was not a good idea. And we decided that 1,000-foot setback was appropriate from a school, from a church. In your case right now, the church is irrelevant because the church is no longer there. But there is a daycare there, and there are plans to have a school there.
To the chair.
Yeah, Marty.
Wasn't it one time, it was 500 feet and then we increased it to 1,000?
We may have. I don't remember.
I think it was always 1,000. It was the same as it was for adult businesses.
Well, I think there's another issue at play here, Rich, if I could just interject my thought, and that is that we run into trouble when we try to make ordinances or revise ordinances for single requests. And I think as much as we want to accommodate residents and allow them to use their properties for the purposes that they would like, as long as they're legitimately within the right zone, you know, this is so selective of a request. And I think that in general, we need to look to make decisions that have broader implications. And so in my personal opinion and how I would vote, and that would be to leave the ordinance the way it stands.
Sometimes we'll make a policy or an ordinance and not knowing what the impact will be down the road. And then when we hear what those impacts are, we can adapt to whatever the change needs to be. And I'm seeing this as being one of those cases. I personally see this as an agricultural use mixed in with medical. I think the legal issues might be a little muddy, but I think the town wouldn't be liable for this use here. I see it as maybe a use that can be applied throughout the town without any problems. And if it was just one owner and they were the only ones that would ever do this, and maybe that would be like a contract zone type of thing. I don't see this being the case.
Okay.
Richard?
Yes, sir.
Just to adjust to your point, I believe that 1,000 feet Schedule 1 is for the school zone, drug school zone. The federal language does not mention anything about daycare or the church. So therefore, Arundel language is even stronger than the federal Schedule 1 language.
Okay.
Richard, could I ask you also, you referred to a school being planned there. What can you tell us about that?
There is, I can't think of what the name of the state agency is, but they want to be able to bring in some handicapped individuals for school training in that building. They want to set up some classrooms and be able to work with them for developmental use. Susan might have a better idea.
Child Development Services is 39 Limerick Road. It is a state as I said last time you had this conversation, is part of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Department of Education runs that building, and every person in it are Department of Education employees. They're looking, because of COVID, they've closed many preschools. Child Development Services runs from birth to age 5, school age 5 for children with disabilities. So families with disabilities will be coming into the building. They are now. What they're doing is they're going to be opening preschools with Child Development Services as running Child Development Services schools, one within the building, which it had in the past been there. There had been one there, if not two, for children with autism. And so they're looking to open that up again because COVID closed many preschools and children are out of compliance. And so they're going to having to go to due process with families because there's no services available. So now they're going back into having a preschool available in the building. Again, the entire building almost is Child Development Services, again, a Department of Education entity. And they're going to be creating a classroom there for children with disabilities.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yeah, Marty.
That is a future plan, but that's not at present.
Yeah.
So
Child
again,
Development Services is currently there, which is a Department of Education site.
So how old would these children be?
Birth to age 5.
Okay, because that's what matters to me. To be frank about it, when Naoto brought his proposal forward initially, I was chilled to it. I just didn't really want to think about changing the scheme. But the more I've thought about this, I mean, what are we trying to accomplish here in terms of protection? I mean, I don't see how protecting church growers from a facility that is 900 feet away, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really understand what protect them from what. And I think the same is true of 0 to 5-year-olds. So the more I've thought about it, I mean, his suggestion as to addressing the church and daycare aspect of things makes more sense to me. If there's any, I will say, if there's any issue at all, it's with a certain age group. And for me, I think we all perhaps would have different views about this, but for me, I would still be reactionary to kids that are in the 11 to 12 to 17 3/4 age range before they attain their majority. I don't want them to be exposed to it at all. So
my comment on that though, Jens, is that this change to the ordinance will enable somebody to put a grow farm right across the street from MLD, because this is a town-wide adjustment to the ordinance.
So
The reality, and Susan nailed the reality, I believe. This is nothing more than a change in the ordinance to suit one individual, but it applies town-wide and it will have devastating consequences. And if this ordinance passes, what's to prevent somebody from coming along saying, I want to put in a tavern? You let marijuana grow within a certain distance of a school. Why should I not be allowed to open up a bar within a certain distance of a school?
But we're not talking about
we're not
schools.
talking about schools. That's my point. If it's
No,
schools,
my point is that this is going to remove it from the ordinance, the 1,000-foot setback in the ordinance. It does
No.
include schools.
No, just
no.
the schools would remain, but would be removing the daycare and churches.
Right.
I do have to add this, that if there's a daycare where there's any danger of that kid getting out and going into a locked facility to know what to do with marijuana, there's something wrong with that daycare center. I wouldn't want my kids going there.
Well, but there are babysitters who pick kids up and all kinds of things, but I think we need maybe to rewrite the ordinance. So, and that was sort of where I was going. If this ordinance is outdated, And right now it's so specific to one requester. Maybe we need to rewrite the ordinance so it's more suitable to the time. And that is, 1,000 feet from whatever we decide. And maybe churches and daycares are not the relevant issue. And maybe we want to target schools, after-school programs, whatever we want to do. But I think that's the way you change this, and not just to make a town-wide change that has an effect that we can't even predict. I mean, we can craft the ordinance to be more suitable to this point in time. That's my feeling.
The caregiver program is only allowed in one zone. I think it DB Business Zone 2, which I don't believe Metro Day is within that zone. Is that right?
We can still
Pam?
rewrite the ordinance so that it's
Yeah.
more suitable. It would give you some leeway, but also would set parameters for anyone else who follows after you so that they would fall into place in a way that would be suitable to the town.
May I say something so that you can maybe avoid a future issue? A school is considered 3 to 5 as a preschool. An IEP is established for a public school and for students 3 to 5. They're not daycares, they're preschools. So when you say that a daycare center, a preschool set up through the state of Maine for a 3-year-old to a 5-year-old is considered a legal document with an IEP that travels with them until they're 21. So just be aware of that, saying that it's a daycare, it's daycare, it's daycare. If they establish a preschool there, it's considered a school. There will be buses going. They have an IEP document. They have all these other things. I just want you to be aware of that separation if you weren't aware of that. Birth to 3 is an IFSP. That is not something that will be an issue. That is something that's usually home-based, and kids come in for meetings, and that's all there is to it. A 3 to 5-year-old preschool is considered legally a school in the state of Maine. In that realm, if it's an IEP based school, it's considered a school because an IEP travels from age 3 all the way up to 21. I'm a special ed teacher. Sorry about that. I just want to make sure you know that legally if you're rewriting the ordinance.
Well, that would be the direction I think we should take. Clear.
Through the chair.
Hi, Marty.
This is going to Tad, please. At one time on Route 1, down there where like Tom's Glasses and everything else, we did have a caregiver location there at one time, did we not?
We did.
And at that time, we did not have 1,000-foot guidelines.
No, we hadn't written any legislation about that at that time. That caregiver facility went in because it was new, and we had a provision that allowed agriculture to occur, and it was lumped in with agriculture because there wasn't a distinction made between marijuana production and agriculture. In fact, they were considered the same. So that's why it went in. It went in under staff review too, because it was such a small operation.
Now, was it any bigger than what Nalto wants to do?
It's probably smaller than what Neonto wants to do. It was a very small facility.
So the way first I have to say, I don't smoke weed. It's not my thing, but I just don't know what the issue is. And I have to tell this little anecdote. When about 25 years ago, when I was on the board, around the market sold beer and wine at the time. And then when the Red Apple was moving next door and they wanted to have to be able to sell beer and wine, the planning board meetings had dozens of people showing up. We don't want that in our town. It's going to turn into a combat zone, and they did. It was like, I think, and it was just an attitude. And then we look like no big deal. Now we got Bentleys and all kinds of drinking going on Route 1, and it's not really that much of a problem. I think marijuana is or hemp or cannabis, whatever we call it, I think is going through that attitude change. I don't see it. I think, our average age is probably close to 70, the 12 of us here. I don't know if we really represent the town fully. I think if you were to ask the average person under 60, they'd wonder what's the big deal, especially the way I look at it is medical and agricultural use. It's regulated by the state. There's all kinds of regulations. There's a limit to how much can be grown, the security, all kinds of issues, who it can be sold to. So it's not just someone walking in, buying something, lighting a joint on the way out of the store. There'll be no drug use at all.
There's no regulation of the caregiver on consumption, preventing on-site consumption, just to make that clear.
Well, okay.
Also, the plants smell a lot more than sometimes people sell. The smell of the plants themselves growing can be quite strong.
Yeah, just ask Sim across from her house. She's got a grow facility that stinks.
And if you're near a school in any way, shape, or form, and the smell of marijuana is continually there, that's what concerns me as a person who does some work with CDS. So that's what my concern is.
Well, we're not talking about schools. I mean, it seems like the vast preponderance of the board here wouldn't budge if we were talking about a school.
Well, why don't we fix the ordinance and say it doesn't apply to daycare and churches, but, well,
I think
and
we
then we
are
should,
striking those two words. Those are useless. They're not really accomplishing anything.
but I think we should insert other things in the event that they become relevant. I don't think you just take them out. I think we need to replace them with something, buildings, facilities, activities that do fall within the parameter of being, needing to be a certain distance from these kinds of facilities. So maybe
So
it's
like
not
recreational ball fields, for example, Sue?
Yes, like gymnasiums where after-school programs are held, or yes, ball fields, or tutorial places, and all.
Yeah. For me, it's going to be anything that isn't going to be involving the presence of kids 10 to 18.
Yeah,
10
I'm with
to
you.
18.
So why don't we just change the language? So I agree with Naoto that preschools or daycares and churches are not as relevant, but there are activities that go on in buildings and that could be close by that we would be concerned about. And so we don't want to completely open it up and remove any kind of definition in terms of, where these facilities can conduct their business. But I think we need to be a little more targeted about who we want to protect and who we don't need to.
To the chair.
Yes, Tom.
And if you were going to do that, I think the board would want to come up with a set of performance standards, because right now we don't have performance standards for this. We only have the state standards. State standards deal with the operation, but not necessarily with the site development. And we've had, if you've been keeping track of what's happening in Lyman, Lyman's going through a terrible situation with this. So it's tearing the town apart because they're allowing growth facilities anywhere. And I think we would want to make sure that we have some standards that are fair to the grower, that he or she knows exactly what is expected of them, and they have the appropriate mitigation strategy there for the planning board to approve. Right now, we have precious little except for this distance. And we have it in a business district, which is somewhat appropriate for this, a large business district. But I think that standards would be something we should do in concordance with changing the setbacks at this point. I offer that up.
To the chair.
Yeah, Marty.
Is Lyman using the growth as a tax base? Because usually I think the tax base relating to, I think, recreational marijuana is 10%, but I don't know if there is actually a tax base for caregiver, because it's not being used for recreation, it's being used for medical.
Taxation, any taxation of marijuana goes to the state.
Yes, but it also kicks back to the town. A certain percentage.
Certain percentage, but the only thing that towns have the ability to do is license, establish licenses for these operations.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Jamie, you were gonna say something?
No, I mean, I think ultimately, Jens touched on it. If schools were in play, it would be a much different conversation for me, but I'm conflicted in a lot of ways, but I think I would lean more to where what I understand or what I recall of this type of operation, it's very, or it should be operated as a very secure type of facility. And that I would be inclined to support the lessening of the setback, as long as those provisions were there to ensure that it wasn't, a retail use, things along those lines, and the protections were there to prevent, unwanted consumption, for lack of a better word, on the premises.
So you think we should adopt Susan's idea of redoing the ordinance as opposed to just striking out the one sentence?
Yeah, I think it warrants, it's a controversial enough topic. I think it warrants a more comprehensive approach than just taking away a couple of uses.
I think that overhauling it or rewriting it is probably too broad. I mean, I don't think it requires that much to make it a better provision, better than it is now, more targeted, more specific.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jens. I think it could be redacted in such a way to make it more suitable, but yet flexible enough as things change, we can make the ordinance adapt with it. I think the way it is now, it's an anachronism, really. And so I think we can bring it up to speed. That would be my suggestion.
Were you gonna say something, Paul?
I'm listening to all this and I agree. It's times have changed. There's no doubt about it since this got put into place. But in this case, wouldn't it be a moot point for him anyway? Because didn't you say there was a school there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't change in this case anyway, right? You're not going to be able to give him relief, but overall, you probably want to go look at it for the future. Unless I'm missing something.
No, I think you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's what we want to do.
And Ms. Sinot said that there's a school there. It is considered a school. Yet I'm hearing some planning board members say, well, it's not a school. So if it is a school, then basically what Paul just said. So is it a school or is there not a school there?
Well, we have to figure out how the state looks at it, and they would have to tell us how they define it. But going forward, I think we would do well to be more specific in terms of, who we're targeting.
I think Susan already gave you the definition.
Right, and I trust Susan to have it correctly, but I think it behooves us to get an official point of view.
That's a definition of a school. We don't have to use that. We can use one that is better targeted. Schools.
Well, and ultimately that. Yeah, sorry, Jens. Ultimately, to me, that when the application, if this were to be lifted or reduced, then it would come to the code enforcement officer, I presume, or TAD, as for a use permit, and they would have to make that interpretation.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I'd like to ask Susan something, if I may. Susan, do you know Lori Whitmore?
Yes, I do.
Okay, she called me today.
Okay.
Yeah, she's going to expand the classrooms.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. There are classrooms that have an IEP that is a legal document from grade 3 that can carry with a child that's diagnosed as a free and public education all the way until age 21 if that maintains with them as a developmental delay or of some sort of intellectual disability, autism, any kind of thing that's qualifying condition as an IEP, which is a legal document for the state of Maine and for national. So if they qualify to go to that classroom, therefore they have a legal document saying that is a school.
Well,
And
there you have it.
that goes to the point that both Paul and Dan were making. If this is a school, this is a moot point.
They're going to be.
I do think having the discussion about making adjustments to the ordinance might be a good idea, but the way it sits right now, it's a moot point. It would not give Neoto any relief at all because there's a school there.
Through the chair.
Well, that's my exact point, though. I don't really consider this language change to be personally only for my purpose. There is a point here to consider daycare or church goers to be somehow harmed by locked facility of a plant's growing is unnecessarily restrictive for other people. If it is truly next door is going to be considered to be school, of course I will be disqualified from having a facility there. But the language still for the daycare and a church should not be there.
And that's what we're discussing by taking it out and adding other things in that would make the ordinance more relevant.
Is the church, is the daycare and the church, is that comes from the state or is that our ordinance?
That's our ordinance. It follows what we have for adult businesses.
Right.
It's a standard that's been used by a lot of towns for a long time. And it varies. Sometimes it's 500, sometimes it's 300. Neoto and I talked about that, I think at the last time, where some are 300 feet, some are 500 feet, depending on which use. It's all over the place, but it mimics our adult business.
Through the chair.
Yeah, Marty.
At the present time, does the town recognize where Susan is speaking or classify it as a school?
I was unaware of that. Did not see it as a school. I thought it was the administrative offices. And I was told by Ms. Whittemore today that it was administrative offices. Those offices have been vacated. And they are now all working remotely from home, those administrators, and they wish to convert those back to classrooms. And so she was calling me today to find out what process she's got to go through to do that.
Because they were classrooms previously and then they were let go because preschools were opening everywhere. And now because of COVID and everything closing, students are becoming underserved for the state of Maine. Again, as a federal and a mandate, we have to serve them whether you have an IEP. So they're creating classrooms to meet that need because of the economy closing down schools they were using.
That would be considered a new use for that building then, right, Ted?
Would it be a new use, Dad, if they were a school before?
Depends how long.
Right.
8 years was what Ms. Whittemore told me.
Yep, that would be a new use.
It's a new use. That's why they'd be coming to the planning board.
Well, I think that Susan and Jens had the right idea with saying, let's tweak the ordinance and not rewrite it completely, but there are some adjustments that can be made. So let's form a little subcommittee and look at it and say, what can we do to tweak this ordinance or to make it better?
Through the new stuff that was coming out last month, did they change any of the wording under the marijuana forums or whatever?
Well, I sent you the link to the,
I never read it. That's why I'm asking.
came up with a lot more rules. The other one I talked to, but it seems like instead of relaxing some of the rules on caregivers, they've actually increased the burden on caregivers in their reporting, their training, their handling of materials, their clientele, their grow facilities. It's a lot more rules than I think anybody expected. But that's what they were having a public hearing on last week. Released the proposed rulemaking, and I could not attend that public hearing. But apparently they've gotten a lot of feedback. I got a letter or a notice today that they're going to react to that feedback and maybe modify a few of the rules. So it's not set in stone yet. It's going through the typical state of Maine rulemaking process right now. But there was nothing on setbacks, if that's what you're asking about, Marty. It was dealing actually with the licensing of caregivers and the operation of the facilities more than anything else.
So should we decide what we're doing with Naoto and proceed later on at some point, tweaking the ordinance so that it's a little more timely, but at least give Naoto a decision?
Somebody make a motion.
I move that we make a decision on Naoto's application.
No, not, that's not a motion. We need to make a decision, either yes or no.
Okay, well, I move that we need to make a decision, either yes or no. On Naoto's request.
Oh, Susan, are you studying to be a politician?
Yes.
I'll float something out there just so we can take a vote. I move that we adopt Naoto's request for scratching or removing the daycare and church from the ordinance.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Tom and seconded by Jamie to remove churches and daycare facilities from the medical marijuana caregiver.
Medical marijuana, yeah, not for recreation or anything else, or retail.
Right.
We don't permit it in the town anyways. It's not.
Right, nothing else is permitted in
right.
town other than the medical marijuana caregiver.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on it?
I think we've had plenty.
Yep.
I don't know. Hearing none. Jamie,
Nay.
Marty,
I'm thinking.
Come back to him, Rich.
Tom,
Aye.
Roger?
Nay,
Is that a yes or a no, Roger? I couldn't tell.
that's a no.
It's a no. Susan,
No.
Jens,
Aye.
no. There are 4
Aye.
no's and 2 yeses.
Aye.
That makes it a tie. That makes it a 3-3 tie. The ordinance fails for lack of a quorum. So it stays the way it is.
I guess
Yep.
No,
Your
you got
vote
7
counts.
people.
I think your counting is wrong, Rich.
Yeah,
Roger said no, Susan said no, and I said no,
And Jamie
And I
said
said no.
no.
and you said no.
So that's
You're
three,
right, thank you. So that's 4-3. The
4-3.
motion fails.
right, regardless, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I thought I was coming up with a 3-3 tie.
the gang's all here.
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda.
Well, I just want to say thank you for
No.
spending all this time.
Pay attention,
Thanks for your consideration.
Neoto.
Yeah.
Pay attention to it because we will be discussing changes to the ordinance and how to
Okay.
tweak it. So
Okay.
join in and participate.
And thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay, thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Discussion with application of home occupations type 1 and type 2 to all residential districts as well as the rural conservation district. We had discussed this, but we've just never really voted on it. And it is now before us. so that we can actually take a vote on it. And all I have to do is find where that is, because I
Yeah.
moved it. I know you gave it to us, Tad.
Yes, I did.
All I gotta do is find it.
Had it twice. He also had it for the meeting with the selectmen. I'm gonna do that next.
At any rate, the idea was to allow home occupations to exist in all of the residential parts of town. Type 1 is permitted, type 2 is conditional.
By right, type 2 is by staff review committee. And you might remember that we went through this definition, the creation of type 1 and type 2 when we were doing R1, redoing the R1 district. And I think the board was going to move on to R2, R3, and R4, but we got waylaid by a lot of work and some other concerns, and so we didn't follow through. And now we have a real disparity between the R1 district and the rest of the districts, in which we have home occupations, but they don't state whether they're a type 1 or type 2. So this just brings all the other residential areas up to the same standard as the R1 district. We don't need to do in the business districts because, quite frankly, you can have any of the businesses that are allowed in those districts. You don't need to have a home occupation.
Well, I move that we adopt the same tiers, tier 1 and tier 2 to all the districts in the town of Arundel.
All the residential districts?
All the residential districts.
All the residential districts, R2, R3, and R4.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made by Susan and seconded by Jens to apply type 1, type 2 home businesses to all of the residential districts. Any discussion?
Question. Yeah,
Yeah, Marty,
doggy daycare, what's that classified as?
that's a separate classification. It's a separate standing under the ordinance.
Right. I have a question with the type 1. You said it's by right, Ted. Do they need to come in for a permit at all, or it's just
They file
automatic
registration.
registration? Okay. And type 2, they do need to get approval,
They have to go to the
staff review.
Right,
Okay.
if you remember correctly, when we went through the process, type 1, really, they have no employees. They're not going to be having a lot of customers. They might be doing beekeeping and selling honey, or it might be
Yeah.
grandma knitting quilts. Type 2 is more apt to have an employee that might be there, be it an accounting firm or almost any kind of business that you could do in a small little section of your home. Because we restricted it to what, 25% of the home?
Forget what it was
25%.
exactly, but
Yep, it is.
it had to do with number of trips and, people coming and going and
Yeah.
whatever. So,
And because of that, home occupations have been done by the staff review committee for some time now. And so we just took type 2 over again and gave a lot more freedom under type 1 to allow people to do their little occupations, whether, and then if they grow bigger and they can get a type 2, and if they grow big enough, which we hope they do, they go into a business district.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Marty,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Jens,
Aye.
Jamie,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Roger.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Next item,
When would you like the public hearing on that, Mr. Chairman?
next week, in 2 weeks.
Can't do it.
You can't do it on the 20th?
I have to advertise it 14 days prior to. It's exactly 14 days prior to.
Okay, then we would be looking at May.
Question, I thought it was 7 days.
No, not for an ordinance change.
May 4th.
We have to advertise it twice in the paper. Yeah, May 4th.
Which papers?
No, you're running out of you're running out of papers, Tad.
We have one. It's the only one that qualifies under state law, and that's Portland Press Herald. Nobody will read it, but
Hey, Tad,
yes, sir.
we already scheduled a public hearing on the 20th.
Yeah, I know, but that's almost 7-day notice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because this one's an ordinance change? Okay,
It's to be advertised twice. Yeah.
okay, so next item. Proposed addition of chapter 1000 DEP shoreline zoning performance standards in land use ordinance section 861.
Just before we go to that, just point of order, do we need to take a vote on scheduling a public hearing? I'm all right if we don't.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion, we schedule it on 4th, May 4th.
May 4th.
Okay,
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for a public hearing on May 4th. Tom made the motion, Jens seconded it. Discussion? Jamie,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Jens,
Aye.
Tom,
aye.
Roger,
Aye.
Marty?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Now, proposed addition of chapter 1000 DEP shoreline zoning performance standards in land use ordinance 861. If you remember, we had made some changes and DEP didn't like them. And then they said that all that stuff in chapter 1000, we weren't kidding. We're serious. And I believe they contacted Tad about our fixing this problem.
Ask them specifically, why did you approve it then? But they missed it.
Yep. They let us go through with it and then they found out and they went, oh, no, you can't do that. Put it back the way it was. And
No,
that's essentially what we're going to do here.
What this does is this deals with certain performance standards that DEP requires. One of which is that in determining minimum lot size for a lot in the shoreline zone, all the areas of that shoreline zone have to be deleted from the minimum lot size. That's kind of tough.
It's going to make it really tough to do anything.
So land below the normal high water line of a body of water or upland edge of a wetland and beneath the road serving lots. So that's upland edge of, is that any wetland or like a larger wetland? How is wetland defined there?
That wetland in that situation would be defined as a regulated wetland.
So any wetland, right?
Basically, it's their version. It's their version of net residential acreage or density.
Yep.
And they
No,
say,
but what I'm trying to do is clarify in my mind whether it is is 1 square foot of wetland considered a wetland in this, or is it a larger, more significant wetland?
I would interpret it as that it is a regulated wetland, which means it's in the shoreline zone.
Okay.
Because these are shoreline zoning regulations, it's got to be in a shoreline zone. Otherwise, it's extending DEP authority beyond shoreline zoning. It's going into natural resource protection. And that's the way I'm interpreting. That's the way that Jeff agreed. So
So they essentially want to have however many, the minimum lot size comprised of upland, non-road land. Right. Okay.
Now that's a DEP. That's what they want.
That's what they want.
Wow.
after 1,000, yeah. Yeah, we had dodged that before, but they came back and told us that we have to put it in. And that was fairly recent. That was very recent.
Do we-
Called on that we were looking at an approval of some lot divisions. And Jeff noticed it, so.
So do we need a motion to move this forward?
Yes.
Okay, I'll move that we approve this or move it forward or whatever.
How about a public hearing on it?
Yeah, we have to go to public hearing.
Move it, okay, so a motion, we schedule a public hearing the same day, May 4th.
Second that.
Motion was made by Tom, seconded by Roger, to move item 3 to a public hearing on May 4th. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marty.
Is that gonna be all Zoom? And how is it gonna get out to the public?
Oh, right now, it's going to be on Zoom, and it'll be advertised the same way the meeting was tonight. And you saw the turnout we had here.
I also remember the meeting tonight. I also, because it is a subdivision, a proposed subdivision, I did send out notice to all the abutters.
And I think they all showed up.
Or most of them did.
Yeah.
Good number.
I can't believe we had 20 odd people in the meeting.
Good.
The shoreline zoning is town-wide, so notification of all property owners in a shoreline zone is not required in this situation. Same thing with all the residential districts. So I have no individual notifications I'm required to do by either state or local law. If I were doing it specific to a specific district, then I would have to notify all the people in those districts. If we're taking rights away, if we're adding rights, then we don't have to do that.
Ed, will that be a separate warrant item?
Sure.
Will the town advertise it also? For
Yeah.
a Zoom meeting?
I assume that we're going to have a Zoom meeting. I think the chair, Mr. Chairman, are we going to continue having Zoom meetings, or when are we going in person?
As far as I know, we're going to continue doing Zooms. I guess that a lot of that's going to depend on the rest of you.
Well, I will also put this out, and to answer your question, Marty, I will put it on the town website. I will send it out on the automatic notifications to those people who signed up. I will put it in the papers, the paper, because that's the only one I've got. And
Other question is, do we have to notify of other abutting towns?
No.
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 Okay.
Sometimes
Jamie?
Shouldn't all you guys be vaccinated by now?
Not yet.
Uh-huh.
Not yet.
I'll be over with a needle.
Swear one.
Don't.
And
I
a hammer.
haven't hit that same limit that you guys have.
Who said they were coming over with a needle?
You're rubbing it in there, Dave?
That's a dig.
Don't bring a
I
don't bring a
resent that
needle to a
remark.
gunfight, Dan. My wife is armed and dangerous.
I'll bring a big hammer.
Okay, Jamie?
What was the motion?
To
May
move
4th
this to public hearing. May
Public
4th.
hearing.
Aye.
On May 4th.
Susan?
Aye.
Jens?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Marty?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
It is unanimous.
Hey, Rich, I got a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
While you're talking about shoreland, you might want to take a look at the land use map, because the land use map talks about the shoreland overlay districts, and it says description of these districts in section 6.4 and section 13. 6.4 is incorrect. That should be 8.4.
Yep, it's being fixed right now.
Okay.
We have Jim Thomas is working on them. calls me every day with more questions.
Yeah, I just noticed that the other day, so carry on.
Okay. Next item, discussion with action, residential growth ordinance. Bundled growth permits for age-restricted and multifamily housing.
Oh, I think, didn't we talk about this and taking it out of the permit limitations for single-family houses?
This was all part of the discussion that we had last Monday with the selectmen. They like the table that we had where we were going to be granting extra instead of, well, not just impact fees, but they looked at it. We had a table in there that said, you know, if you're doing age restricted or you're doing multifamily, you could get, instead of getting one permit per building, you could get 3 or 4 buildings on a particular permit. The brunt of the discussion, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was of the opinion that we're still going to stay with 40 permits, and those permits are going to, for multifamily and age restricted, are going to come out of that 40. We're just going to allow them to put up more than one building at a time, or more than one occupancy unit.
Right, we have to make a determination on how many units constitutes a permit. Right, that's what was discussed.
Yes, thank you. And that was in.
So we're not going to separate it further, Rich, how we discussed it in the beginning, where single-family houses have their own bundle of permits, and then age-restricted and multifamily have their own bundle of permits, but one doesn't impact or use up the other's ability to build and develop?
We can go down that route. The selectmen were saying that they did not like that idea.
Was it just
They would
too much
prefer just to deal
building?
with the 40 units and the 40 permits that are in the growth ordinance
In total?
in total.
Okay.
And if you look under the amended residential growth ordinance that Tad sent out, down on page 2, there's a little table 1.7 that breaks out what we were looking at in terms of how we go about allocating out these permits. So for example, a 1-bedroom or a studio, you could get 4 units on 1 permit.
So I just want to be clear what we're voting for. So that means we have, what's the limit of 40 per year in town?
40 permits.
40 permits. If they were all 1-bedroom studios, would that mean, would it be allowing 160 that year?
If they, well, no, because they'd have to be going into elder-based housing or multifamily units in order to qualify for the 1 per 4 units. If it was
Elderly
single
or
residences,
55
they'd get
and
1
older?
per.
Elderly or 55 and older, or all 3?
Well,
Elderly, 55 and over, and multifamily?
We would have to decide that. Do we want to break it up in that fashion? Do we want to say 55 and over, or 62 and over, or 66 and over? We would have to decide how we wanted to treat elderly housing.
Yeah, so I want to go back to something that I brought up like a half a year ago, that when I look at this, I see that it's very clear we don't want young families in town, or owners of a single family. To me, I think I like having some weight to age restricted or apartments, but single family dwellings is the only one that's just 1 per unit, and or duplexes as well. but it's, to me, I think it goes too far. That's just my opinion. But I think I'd rather see, and I said this before, I'd rather see us encourage more affordable homes for families. And I'm well beyond that age. When my kids live out of state, so they're not affected. But it would be nice to have more families in town, so we don't have to close the one school in town at some point.
But Tom, there's nothing in the ordinance that stops that. And going forward, there was nothing that would stop that. It's there, right? I mean, it's still there.
So maybe it's the weight. The weighting is we'll see a spurt of growth like we've never seen before. If I was a developer, I'd say that the hell with waiting one at a time for single family. I just go condos and get 3 or 4 per permit. And
But that growth happened this summer. This summer, this was the first time that we've ever reached our max. I mean, that growth is happening now, and it's all single family homes.
I know, but we're hitting 40 right now, but in the 40 is easy to count. Is 1 unit per permit. But if this opens up and we're hitting 40, there could be well over 100 new units in town. So what's the purpose of a growth ordinance?
I think from that point of view, we as a planning board would have to look at it and say, okay, do we want to allow 160 one-bedroom elderly housing units or 160 multifamily one-bedroom units in town? Or do we want to come up with some other kind of a number that says we're only going to allow so many in a particular year?
I'm not entirely opposed to this, but it's a very dramatic change from what we've had. We can count the number of new dwellings that have been built, and this will be, well, there's a new building. How many are in there?
Well, that's where you have to come up with a certain amount, right? The last thing that we want, and I mentioned this at the meeting, the last thing that we don't want is somebody like a Horahan to come in, like you remember when he wanted to come in at Dutch Elm and.
We lost Dan.
We lost Dan. But yeah, he wanted to come in and put in 125 units tomorrow. And we ended up saying, no, that's not going to work for us.
So, yeah.
Well, remember one thing, the same structure applies where you can't get more than 6 permits. And no one individual, corporation or individual can get more than 6 permits in a year.
Oh, I didn't see that in there. So that helps me a little bit.
Yeah, that's been in there for a while. I hadn't thought about that one either. But at 6 permits, you're talking about 24 units.
24 is the most you could get.
So Dan, I have a question for you. I'm sorry I missed the meeting last week. I didn't put it on my calendar, but what is the rationale by not bifurcating single family permits from multifamily and age restricted housing and not dealing with them as 2 separate units? Did you just feel it would create too much building going on, or?
Well, I mean, certainly we don't want, at least my consensus, I think, the rest of the board felt the same way, is, we want to control the growth, right? We just don't want the growth to all of a sudden expand and go out like crazy. So that was part of controlling the growth. And we looked at the 4 options that you presented to us. And we said, okay, how do those 4 options, how do they look? And we kind of said, well, let's take those 2 of those options, get rid of the point system, take 2 of those options, and let's try to combine together and come up with one ordinance.
So is there a cap on the number of multifamily? And so if there are only 40 permits, it's sort of whoever gets to the permit desk first?
No,
First come, first
Tom was
served.
saying you could get somebody to use all 40 and no single family houses being built at all?
No, I think that's something that we as a planning board would put a cap on.
Right.
We would look at it and say, I'll use off the wall numbers because it's always great that way. We would look at it and say, okay, we're gonna have 20 residential building permits. We're gonna have 10 elderly housing, and we're gonna have 10 multifamily. The multifamily and the elderly housing could end up with as many as 40 units in there, but it'd only be 24 by any one developer. That could be problematic if you want to look at it and say, okay, do we want to cut the single family residences that much? Probably not. I know Tom would not like that idea.
No, and I don't like it either. I think we ought to encourage single family residences, but I think we also need multifamily and senior living as well, but I'm not sure that it serves us our best interest to have them both in the same tranche. So maybe have single family,
Well,
maybe
again,
30 single family home permits per year and maybe, 20 multifamily or, 10 multifamily, age restricted, whatever. And that would give you, the varied growth that you're looking for. And not all single family, but not all possible multi-unit buildings either. I mean, I don't know.
That's an.
If you had the multifamily, would that be considered clustering again?
You can do it that way.
Yeah, you could, or we could address it in a different fashion.
It'd be a condo situation.
Yeah.
Separate, they could be standalone, they could be attached.
But I think we need both. The question is, how do we want to divvy it up?
Right, more than anything, that becomes the question. How do we divvy it up? And even that chart that's on page 2 of this recommendation, right now, that's just a recommendation, as something to work with and adjust out from there. The question becomes, how do we as a planning board want to go through and work with that? Or do we want to say, well, no, we would rather have them as standalone ordinances. But if we do it as a standalone ordinance, then we're going to have to look at it and say, how many permits are we going to allow?
So, and I think that's what I'd like to see is maybe 40 is too low, but to open it up to the highest potential could be well over 100, which is a big jump from what we have right now. So maybe if we could have a cap at, let's say 75 or something, I think just to put a lid on it.
But a certain number of those then would be single family, right?
It could be whatever the mix is, whoever comes first, I'm all right with that. I just don't want to all of a sudden go from 40 a year to potentially well over 100 per year.
That we certainly support that. Don't want to see that because that would be such a tax on our resources, and we're certainly not ready for that.
Yeah, no matter what
What's
age.
the most with per head issue in 1 year, Tad?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't hear that all.
What's been the high water mark for issuance of permits?
This year when we hit the
40.
Yeah, we had over 40.
So it seems to me if we increased it
We had over 40 out.
50%, that ought to be more than adequate.
Well, there is that provision. Let's not forget we've gone through this every 3 years, and we've done a statutory requirement of going through and looking at the moving average for building permits in a 3-year period. And actually, as Dan noted in the report that we gave, actually the history of the last 3 years indicates that we should actually be lowering the standard. The statistics support lowering the 40 down to like 35 or 36. It started off at 35. There's a safety valve in there in which the board can, but based on just what the demand is, the board can increase or decrease the number of permits. It's meant to be flexible. It's not just the absolute gold standard. This is the first year we've been in a position where we actually might be able to increase it, but we'd have to have several years of that kind of intensity of growth or that kind of intensity of demand to warrant going higher.
Yeah.
Hey, Tad, one question about that. When you're talking about flexibility, right now it's based upon the arbitrary time period of a calendar year, right?
Right now it is, yes.
So I wonder about a format where it looks back in time from wherever the potential application is, as opposed to a calendar year.
So are you saying like a rolling
Yes.
12-month period of time? So that
Moving
if over the course of a year, we had a couple of months where there was nothing in there, then we just say, well, okay, the first 2 months we did nothing, so we're going to carry it forward 12 months from that point. So
You're
12
just
months from
complicating
March.
things if you start
Yeah.
doing that.
Tad will be glad to work with those numbers.
Keep it simple,
No, I'm
guys.
just
Don't
thinking,
complicate
my
things.
thought is, if you get into a period where it's slow, then wouldn't that justify opening the gates a bit? And if you get into a crush,
If it's slow, you're not getting pressure on that.
The pattern has been when it's slow, it's a long turnaround before it increases and vice versa. We only hit the max one other year, as far as I know. Might have been 15 plus years ago. And the
Long
very
time.
next year, it went right back to half.
But if
So
you
you're talking
remember,
about accrued vacation time, Jens? Is that what you're talking about? Is that what this, so you would roll it over? So you've accrued so many days and if you don't use them.
yeah,
in
it's kind of like that. Yeah.
we already,
Following year?
but we've already discussed doing that to a degree, because right now we talk about the fact that we only issue 4 permits a month. And we made the decision that if we didn't use them all up in the month of July, then whatever was left over would roll into August or into September. So we're already talking about rolling some of them over, but we're restricting it at year end. Yes, Paul?
Has anybody looked at, based on the zoning that you got, size of lot you got, open land is left, if somebody was to split all the land up, do you know how many more lots you could ever, or house permits you could ever give out?
That's a good question.
There's probably quite a bit because there's still a lot of land out there that's open.
Well,
And
that's what I'm wondering though, based on, size of lots, right? Do you really know that number or a ballpark close to it?
It keeps changing, Paul, but no, we don't have a full carrying capacity yet. No, we don't. We can figure it out. There's a lot of variables,
Thank you, Roger.
size of the configuration of the lot, how much wetlands, how much lousy soil. A lot of land that has terrible soils.
There is.
Much clustering.
That's why clustering is going to become more and more important, because it's the only way you're going to be able to develop. And so we have also access problems. We have a lot of lots that just are. In fact, I dealt with one today that just impossible. You had to put a driveway half a mile just to get access to one lot.
Have the Oak Ridge issue where maybe you could build on it, but you don't have a backup exit.
yeah, it's a very hard number to come up with. I mean, look at everything that's up along Route 111, all of that land. Somebody could buy that and subdivide that. I mean, it's a very hard number to come up with, but to the point that somebody might think it was Tad, there's a lot of land out there. There's still the ability for a lot more houses in this town.
Yeah.
And personally, I don't want that, but that's just my opinion.
Look at your Proctor Road.
So what do we need to do, Rich, with this? Do we need to vote on something, or is this just further discussion?
Right now, it's just further discussion until we can, we need to decide how we want to handle it. Do we want to look at it and say, and as you suggested, and Jens, I believe, had made a suggestion about making 50% more in terms of the number of permits that are out there. Do we want to do that and then allocate those permits out for elderly housing and for multifamily? Do we want to leave it at 40 and pull some of those permits out? And if we do, if we want to leave it at 40 and we decide to pull some of them out, how do you feel about well, regardless of how that works, but when we look at the elderly housing and the multifamily housing, how do you feel about the tables that say 1-bedroom studio? You get 1 permit and you can get 4 units. Because that'll encourage the growth of multifamily and or elderly housing.
We had that over on the old post road where his son had going across the golf bricks.
Yeah,
Brook Road.
yeah, all those small units.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there is how do you define that table? I don't have it right here in front of me and I could probably go look it up online here, but how do you define that table? Because to Tom's point, we certainly don't want, to go from 40 to whatever the huge number is. But I think you have to make some sort of provisions in there that says, okay, we're open for elderly housing. We're open for business for elderly housing, but we don't want to get it out of control. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that would be interested in some sort of elderly housing here in town. But you got to make that cutoff on saying, okay, 1 permit constitutes how many, X amount of apartments, if you will. So I think that's where you got to come up with and make that definition on what is the right number for that. And that's part of the 40 that's allowed a year.
So I personally would like to separate single-family houses and the number of permits we allocate every year for single-family houses and separate it from what we're going to allocate for multifamily townhomes and senior living or 55 and older. Because what's going on, like for instance, in Kennybunk on Route 1, just over the town line.
Yeah.
I forget the name. Is it Sunrise or whatever that community is?
Yeah.
They're building there like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And every one of those units is sold.
Yeah.
They're so oversubscribed. And I don't think that there's a downside to having some of that in town too, but I don't know that it necessarily needs to cut into what we make available for single family houses. So we can decide how many we want to build in multifamily and in townhomes and things like that, and put that in its own quadrant. And then allocate a certain number of single family homes.
Keep in mind that the single family homes will have, taxing on the schools, whereas the seniors won't, but the seniors probably will have more taxing on the rescue, the ambulance and kind of thing. So you got to try to balance that out a little bit. And I don't think
maybe reduce down the number of maybe make it 30 and have like 20 permits available for multifamily, senior living and whatever, because that will give you more units.
Right. That's a possibility. And I guess I would just kind of throw in that, maybe if you make a provision within the ordinance that by X amount of time, if, all of the 20, I'm just picking numbers, if all the 20 of the seniors aren't open, then maybe you turn those over to single family in case somebody wants it. Like an issue like what happened this year where we used all of those permits. I don't want to take away from people from building, but we certainly got to control the growth a little bit. That's just something to think about.
Well, plus you have a lot of old fogies moving here and building single family houses who don't have any children and pay a lot of taxes for all those phantom children that are going to school. I know, because I just paid my taxes. And so I understand what you're saying, Dan. So,
Susan?
Yeah.
But the fact is that as you were speaking of those units, one thing they have along the way, they also have all the public water and they also have all the sewer, which we're here, we don't.
Right, I agree. It's an issue.
and that's probably what's holding a lot of it.
Right.
A lot of developers from coming to town and asking for that. So that in essence may slow that down because of what we have for an infrastructure.
And also what we have for density. Let's remember one thing, folks. I mean, we may be opening some flood, you may see this as opening floodgates in terms of growth permits, but still we have zoning requirements, minimum lot size, or number of units that you can get on a lot, still based on single family and multifamily are use the same scale. So you have to have 1 acre for one multifamily unit, the same as 1 acre for a single family unit. Right now, the economics say I'd go with single family units because you can get a lot more return on 1 acre of land for that than you can with a multifamily unit. So until we were to add some density bonuses for multifamily, like we did down if you remember, down at the Grange, single family homes are going to trump every single time because you make more money on them if you're a developer.
Right, it may police itself, but there still should be provisions in there that allow it to happen and not explode as what Hurricane wanted to do.
I kind of like your suggestion, Susan, of 30, 10, and 10.
That equals 50.
Yeah, it does. But if you then allow it to say, okay, well, we're not getting the all of the multifamily or the age restricted that we thought would come in this year, you could always pull 10 of them down into the 40 single family units.
Yeah, I mean, we can play with the numbers, but, I think they should be standalone considerations. And I agree with Tom too. We have to have single family housing for young families, but by the same token, people are buying up land, they're building decent sized houses, there's nothing available.
Yeah.
And
I agree with Tom that we need to have single family houses, single families coming in, buying up houses and putting their kids in school. The only problem I have is that by any stretch of the imagination, I cannot conceive of affordable housing when you're looking at $300,000 to $400,000 for a house. When did that ever become affordable?
That's what's being built now. I mean,
I
that's
know
what's
it.
being built in Hisong. That's what's being built over at Oak Ridge. It's
The-
400 plus houses, $400,000 plus house.
I remember, guys, you remember the subdivision we put on Brimstone Road, the 3 units right on the road?
Yep.
They sold one of those lots for $120,000.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good deal. I think they paid for all of the land with that one house.
Ridge Road, 5 years ago, one of those 3 acre lots went for $120,000. And that was 5 years ago.
But you got to remember who's coming up this way, right? It's all people from down south. I mean, I talked to folks across the street here in Hisong subdivision that are building a house, and they come from the Boston area. That's what's moving up here, and to them, $300,000, $400,000 is nothing. So it's the reality. That's what's going to happen. We're not going to change it. It's just going to continue to get worse. So
I totally agree.
Did you see the news report last week? 2,600 people a week are leaving New York City. They're
And more
bailing
than
out.
that are leaving California.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because they're not going to California. They're coming to places like Maine. They're going out to Montana where you can get stuff really cheap.
Yeah, but they're all coming in through Texas.
They were all on the turnpike every freaking night.
Seems that way, doesn't it? Okay.
Why don't we
sound like somebody
study this some more so we can get home?
Right.
These turn into pumpkins in 10 minutes, guys.
No, 40 minutes.
No.
These are
No,
the
it's 9:20.
I'm sorry. I have a clock up here that has me on Central Standard Time for one of my jobs, and I looked at it. I'm in the wrong time zone.
Yes, you are.
But these are the different issues that we have to look at and work on around the growth ordinance. So we've got some work cut out for us.
Hey, wasn't there also a discussion about trying to get rid of the point system in time for the June meeting?
I believe we've already had the public hearing on that.
That's going. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we fixed that last year, and have it all set. We've had the public hearing and everything. You guys should have it coming up in your packet to
For the
place
warrant.
on the agenda.
We went over it. It was in their packet last.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just couldn't remember if it was an article that was already done. I couldn't remember.
Yep, it's all done and ready for prime time.
So what you want me to do is look at bifurcating the two types of uses here, the single family and the multifamily. And the big question will be, if you say, well, okay, if we don't get any multifamily or any of the alternative housing, let's call it that, then that automatically slips over into the single family. It adds to it. I mean, that's gonna be interesting.
Or not.
I think toward the end of the year, I mean, we could look at it at say October, if there are still a number of permits that are available in the multifamily or elderly housing, and they're running out of permits in the single family, we could move some over. It'd be done on a case-by-case basis, and we'd have to look at it.
But I think we need to come up with a max, Tad, of how many on the multifamily senior living side we really want to permit in a calendar year. And then divide that into the number of permits that would give us that number and not issue more than that.
Right,
Does
and
that make
all,
sense?
right, and also how many units constitutes one permit.
That's right.
Correct. Yep.
And then we come up with a number, a max number, and work our way back from that. And that will give you the number of permits you can issue on that side, in that group. So you'd never exceed that number and you don't get the explosion that Tom was talking about.
All right.
Okay. It gives us something to work with.
Yeah, okay. I think we can work on that.
Time to go home.
Are we
Almost.
pumpkins?
What do we got?
Got 7 minutes.
Okay, that takes care of all of the stuff that was on the agenda, other
Yes.
than planners meeting or planners notes.
Buster was on the agenda.
Item 5.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Not tonight.
We didn't go, basically what I took is what we did at the last meeting. What we agonized over and worked on has been codified into section 2E. And remember, we were talking about the standards that are going to be used. You know, what we were looking for, quality, issues of quality.
We hadn't,
Time to get into it, but the next one was going to be we were going to move from dimensional standards to minimum lot size. We had enough time right now. We got 5 minutes. Why don't you look at the minutes, Mr. Chairman? I would suggest we look at the minutes from the 16th because
yes, the minutes of March 16th. So we will table this cluster discussion until the next meeting. So now Roger, Susan, Tom, Jens, Marty, hey, we're all here.
what else?
Bless you, Roger.
Are you waiting for a motion, Rich?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I move that we accept the minutes from the 16th. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll
As written.
second that.
Motion was made by Susan, seconded by Roger to accept the minutes of the March 16th meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none. Marty,
Yay.
Roger,
Hey,
Jens,
Aye.
Jamie,
Abstain.
Susan,
Yes.
Tom?
Hey.
I'm sorry, Tom.
Yes,
Yes, okay. And
Yes.
Jamie, you abstained?
Yes.
Okay. So it is 6 in favor, 1 abstention. And now the race is on to see who says it first.
No, I'm not doing it.
What do you have for us,
Planner
Ted?
Planner minutes?
We have 2 new items that are becoming to for next for the 20th, and that's it. So
Enough. So we can,
I haven't heard anything from our friends at Holy Donut yet.
okay.
They're working on something, but they haven't come in.
So we should be able to get the growth ordinance on the minutes or on that meeting on the agenda.
And I will move, we adjourn.
second.
I'll second that motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. You all have a good evening.
You
Okay,
too.
take care.
Well, good night, guys.
I'll see ya.